Welcome to the Storyteller's Mind Movie Makers, the podcast where stories are not just told, they are felt. Hosted by Melissa Reaves, master storyteller, dynamic keynote speaker, and founder of Story Fruition. This podcast is your guide to transformational storytelling. Each episode, Melissa takes you to explore the art and science of crafting powerful narratives that move hearts, shift perspectives, and spark actions. Whether you're pitching to investors, leading a team, or stepping on stage, your story is your superpower. So get ready to build your story library and ignite your impact. Welcome to the Storyteller's Mind Movie Makers.
Well, welcome back, or welcome for the first time to all of you storytelling mind movie makers. This is the show where we're going to study the science to the art form of storytelling. And why does that matter? Because we need to tell stories all the time, especially in business. But we also have personal stories that we've gathered along our lives, obviously. Each format, it could be a client's success story, or it could be a personal story that you're telling about your own trials and tribulations that maybe someone that is going through a similar situation can feel like they're not alone. So today's story that I'm going to share is going to help us study the power of senses. And I'm going to tell a story and then we're going to break it down. Okay. So this story is in my book, The Storyteller's Mind Movie, and it's called Hand in Hand. Okay. And it goes like this. So it's 1994 and I am sitting at a luau in the Big Island, on the Big Island of Hawaii. And we have the most amazing tasting pork that's been roasting in the ground, wrapped up in banana leaves, purple potatoes, which I'd never experienced before, fresh salads, and plenty of wine. And as I'm sitting there with my husband, because this is our honeymoon, and we're so excited because we're going to walk hand in hand through life, our table mates are named Jack and Sandy. And they're kind of a fun, playful couple, and they announce that this is how they announce themselves. They're like, "Hi, I'm Jack, and I'm Sandy, and we're here on our 30th wedding anniversary." Now, that's great, but we can't help but notice that Jack does not have a hand. I mean, it's just chopped off, gone. And it's fine. It's just friendly banter. They tell us a little bit about the story, and then we just move on. Lovely time. But the next day, I gotta have more of that pig. I mean, it's that good. And so now we have an entirely new group of people. And my husband turns to me and he goes, "The guy does not have a hand." I'm like, what? Are you Oh my gosh, he doesn't. Oh my God, that's so weird. I mean, come on, that's weird. And spiritual things happen in three. So now I'm like looking around, trying to see if there's anyone else without a hand, but no one. And again, pleasant conversation, and we move on. But we could never figure that out. Why were two people in a row on our honeymoon with only one hand? Well, 20 years later, our marriage has receded, just like the waves crashing into the sands of those beaches. And I'm sitting on a bench with my husband, and he says, "So, are we done?" "Yeah, we're done." And as we stand up, this woman, who we don't know, walks out of the public bathroom, and she has one hand. And as we stand up, we walk single-handedly towards divorce. Okay, so now let's unpack that personal story. Okay, first off, that story could be very helpful if you have a friend who's going through divorce, or if you have an example of someone saying, like, "I had these weird things happen to me." That's definitely a weird story that I could pull out of my story life toolbox. So it's a story that I have told before, and I've used it in performance level storytelling. It's even won awards, but whatever. That's not the only reason why I tell a story. So let's study now the elements of what happened with that story. So I used senses. So I started with some data. It's 1994, and I am sitting at a luau on the Big Island of Hawaii. Right there. There's the where, okay? Now, I then go into the food. You know that we're eating roasted pig that's been wrapped in banana leaves, that has been roasting in the ground all day. All right? Now, that's pork. Did you, when you were listening to it, smell it and taste it? Then I explained the purple potatoes, and I have an opinion about them because I've never seen them before. And if you've never had purple potatoes, that's an unusual potato, so that's kind of an interesting detail. And then fresh salads, I kept general because you'll come up with your own salads in your mind. And then plenty of wine for us to sip and enjoy. Now, I didn't say it was Chardonnay. I didn't say it was Chablis. I didn't say it was red wine. I just said wine because I know that the audience is enjoying their own glass of wine, possibly, as they are enjoying the luau and the tastes and flavors with me. Then I added sound when I introduced Sandy and Jack, and I used dialogue. I said, "Hi, I'm Jack, and I'm Sandy, and we're here on our 30th wedding anniversary." Gave them enthusiastic sounds so that you could picture them. I said 30th wedding anniversary. Again, that's another piece of data. So you could, in your own imagination, start to think, oh, they must be a little bit older. They're probably, I guess, in their 50s, maybe 60s. So you've created the characters in your head. And then he doesn't have a hand, right? Just chopped it off. No big deal. And it's just friendly banter. So all of that, like we just stop right there. I have oxytocin actually running through your minds because I've used very clearly food, and food creates smells and tastes. All right. And it's also a story, a love story. So that neurotransmitter is probably starting to flow through you, and I'm pulling you in. All right. And then the story goes on with the next characters and how we're looking for the person to have another hand missing. Like we can't find it and it becomes a mystery. So then I fast forward. I used time travel. I just simply said, 20 years later, our marriage has receded like the ocean waves hitting the shores of those beaches. Could you hear those beaches? Could you hear those waves hitting that beach? Many of you will probably say yes, that you did. Okay. Now I've done a soft entry into a sound, right? Just by saying, because we've all heard water hitting the shore. Most of us have probably seen oceans. Okay. And that's a very distinct, very wonderful experience for most people. And so, but I'm using it in a sad way. Our marriage receded like the ocean waves hitting the shore. So you could see maybe the white foam and then it's coming back. That's what I'm intending in the imagination of the listener. Okay. And then when we're in the park bench, I said, 20 years later, we've got that. And I've now moved us into a new scene. Okay. I didn't talk about then we had kids and we went to school and blah, blah, blah. I didn't do any of that. I just cut it all out. And in the book, I call it weed whacking. And I brought us right to that park bench. And Kenny and I, my husband, had to have that conversation. When the woman walks out of the public bathroom. So what did you see? Did you see a square building with the doors that don't have doors, but they allow people to go in? Did you see the symbols for the men's room to the women's room? And when she walked out, what did she look like other than she had no hand? Was she an older woman, a younger woman? Did she have children with her? I don't know. If that's what happened in your mind, maybe it did. But I have you seeing that. And then I tie it together in that finally, like the mystery gets solved, that we stand up and now we walk single-handedly towards divorce, which was a tie back from the beginning where I said, we're so excited to walk hand in hand through life. But at the end, I pull back, we're walking single-handedly towards divorce. So it's a story that it has a lot of depth in it. It's not a very long story, but I just want you to think about moments in your life where you're in a situation and I want you to tell it, but I want you to be thinking in the picture painting. And I want you to try to think about, like, was there food involved? If so, what kind? What was the air like? What was the vibe like? Like, you could tell, like, with the luau, we were having a great time. I hope. I mean, all of my language and tones were indicating that we were having a great time because I said the next day I had to have more of that pig. So obviously we had a great night the night before. So that's how we use senses, okay? So you have sight, which is probably one of the easier ones, unless, of course, you are not able to see. But when you paint the picture, people will see it. They'll start sitting at that luau in their minds with you. Sights and sounds. The sounds I've already shown you with the dialogue as well as with the ocean. Taste with the food. Smell with the food. And then I also have inner thoughts and dialogues going. Okay? So we have both of the adults are talking in this. All the adults talk. All of the adults show who they are. We don't just tell you. Most people would have told that story like this. This would have been the average way. It would have been like, well, when I was in Hawaii on my honeymoon, there was a guy that didn't have a hand, and it was kind of weird. And then the next night we went back, and the other guy, the new guy, doesn't have a hand. And then our wedding, our marriage ended up breaking up. It was like 20 years later, and I was at a park, and this woman walked out, and she didn't have a hand. And that's when I realized, like, I thought we were going to walk through life together, and now we're walking single-handedly. Tells the story, but it's vague. It doesn't have the dramatics, if you will. Now, you can do these in different environments. You can tell a story like this. If you were on a podcast, telling the story like I did is very rich. The audience just is listening to storytelling, and it's great. If you were at a cocktail party or a networking event, and somehow, for some reason, you have to tell that story, might be a little bit balanced. It might have the details, but then pulled back just a tiny bit. But if you're standing on a moth stage, for sure, you're going to want to use all those details, because at a storytelling event like that, the moth is the granddaddy of all storytelling, and many people land on NPR with it. They're not landing on it with vague stories, I can promise you that. They're landing on it because they're creating mind movies. That's what's happening. So that's all I'm going to say about the senses. But now you can kind of see how important they are and why you're using them to really entice your audience to listen. Okay? Now, that was a personal story, but we can do the same thing with professional stories. There is one that we will talk about in data storytelling, where we're going to take a chart and we're going to look at some numbers, and then we're going to tell a story that the numbers are indicating, because all those numbers are about people. So again, tell your stories and tell them well. Learn why and how you can become more captivating, and watch also as your leadership starts to elevate, because people are going to find you more interesting, right? And then, we get to live on this planet. Let's live it vividly. And that's where our stories come in. Okay, that's it. Thanks so much for showing up at this podcast and this show. Please like, comment, let me know what you think. We love that. And share. Let's get a lot of people realizing that they too are walking, talking storybooks of wisdom. All right, tell your stories and tell them well.
Thank you for joining us on the Storyteller's Mind Movie Makers. If you're ready to build your story library and turn your lived experiences into unforgettable mind movies, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this podcast with others on the storytelling journey. And don't forget to follow us on YouTube and Instagram at Story Fruition for even more storytelling tips, behind-the-scenes moments, and live story coaching. Until next time, keep crafting, keep sharing, and remember, tell your stories and tell them well.